Hello, and welcome to the video commentary for Goblyn, issue 14A. I am Solomon Mars, creator of the Goblyn series. So let's just hop right into this. This cover, it was meant to be sort of one of those things where it was a mystery as to who this character might be that is facing off against the characters that the main characters of the story, well, at least on the cover, Amy and Reduha and Rock Eater. And even though you can't tell it's a gun, you can tell that's something. I guess it looks somewhat technological. And up to this point, there hasn't been a whole lot of advanced technology in the story. So, this is kind of a little different, a little strange. But it was definitely supposed to sort of harken back to like those old comic book, the covers of like the 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, all on back, where they would have this sort of word bubble or a sunburst on the cover that was like, who is this strange new mystery character? Find out, on the that kind of thing. And it was supposed to be one of those kind of things, but I'm not gonna go that corny with by putting like a sunburst on the cover, talking about who is this character or whatever. But still, I wanted to add a little bit of mystery. I didn't want to reveal the character until the next issue, at least on the cover. I didn't want to reveal this this particular character. So just hop right in. They're setting up their plates for they're breaking out the fine dining ware, or as about as fine as dining ware can get for the Rune Claws. And like a lot of the furniture that they have, like this table and stuff, it's a makeshift table. A lot of the furniture is makeshift furniture, where they tore up a lot of the statues around the area, or even they just kind of moved ones that had already been knocked down and eroded and stuff like that. And they just use those, use your surroundings as your furniture, kind of thing. Use what you have instead of like buying furniture, or well, they probably can't carve anything themselves. They're probably not that skilled. And we just see some feet being dragged across the ground. I really wish I had given more emphasis to the feet and the fact that they were being dragged, like really tilted them back and shown some resistance against the ground. They just kind of look blah there, but and these guys hauling them off, having conversations. I think I mentioned this in an earlier commentary, where I love like the sort of like the everyday guy, just average Joe Blow, and his workaday life, and the conversations that like guys have. Like I always loved in the original Star Wars film how two of the stormtroopers were just having this really average conversation while they're on doing their everyday patrols, and they're having a just conversation, and it was one of those things that stuck with me, and I really, really loved it. So I always do stuff like that. I show just regular people just living life, because I want the whole world, any world that I create, to sort of seem like it's alive, even when the characters aren't there. So I want the other people to seem like they have lives too. And yeah, even the Rune Claws, they're people too. They're bad people, but they are people. I should have commented on that knife that guy had. It had a texture on it that I liked. I noticed it just as I was turning the page. Let's see. Bringing in food. That food actually looks really delicious. I have no idea what that is. It's some sort of vegetable. I can tell because it has seeds on it. It's got little baked lines on it. And Lancaster bragging about not using the Tosak worms. to mine the entire cave system is mined out by. Initially, it was mined out by Tosak worms by his father, but now he uses a more precise, quote unquote, sort of labor, and he uses child labor, which is why he is a bad guy. um, oh, I think the Doma is affecting his mind as well. Definitely. He's definitely going crazy. And this, the whole idea behind this strange form of entertainment, their whole dining area being next to this particular path that the Tosaks go through, and there's, it's me thinking about the Romans and how they would have entertainment in their colosseums, or the circus areas, and I mean everyone would just join in. Everyone would sit down and come. Well, if you could afford it, you would go there. But it was fairly affordable because it's that one of those things. If you keep the people happy, then society stays. It staves off revolt of the people. If they're always thinking about being overtaxed and being poverty stricken, then you have a situation on your hands as far as if you're a government official, a political official. But if you can keep them entertained, you can keep them distracted. And, and it's something that pretty much still applies to this day. Anyways, these guys, that's kind of what he's doing here. He keeps his men entertained. Granted, most of the guys that are currently in this hall right now are they are higher up in the ranks, and you can tell because they have capes. If it's not a cape that's only on one sleeve, then it's a full cape. People with full capes have a much higher rank than people with one of those half capes that I don't even know if those have names. I'm sure they do have a name for that one-shouldered cape. I love those things though. They're just odd. It's like it has to be purely decorative because it doesn't have a utilitarian purpose. A half a cape. What does that do? Other than look pretty. And so they're tying Jeff up, and again, just a little conversation between these guys, showing that they work together a lot. Ties curly knots. Wow. And then outside, they've knocked out some of the guards. I did want to show them being knocked out, but then I was like, let's just get this story going. There's no need to show them sneaking up on the guards and then knocking them out. It's just like, let's just keep going. More sneaking around corners. I think I mentioned that in the previous podcast, a previous commentary, where I do a lot of sneaking around corners, characters sneaking around corners and stuff, and I just like that look and the idea of having to sneak around corners. You don't just go barreling around corners in a place that you're unfamiliar with. Or at least I don't. And they're going in, they're going to save Jeff, save the kids. I really wanted Sankofa and Amy to be the only ones that noticed the little creatures in the series, in the cave system. Sorry. And the little sounds coming from around the corner. And these guys, more people having conversations between each other, just regular guys doing what they do, living life. It's what they know. Hey, we're room claws. Yeah, this is what we do. um, but these guys they're doing something kind of specific. Um, the stuff that they're using, they're putting down. It's going to serve a purpose, a slight purpose, a little bit later on. Um, but they really are putting a lot down. But I mean, he kind of comments on that. In a way, he's commenting on the fact that they're putting a lot of it down. But they really are. I would think that they probably would have only been putting they would have had one bag between the both of them under normal circumstances, and they would put that down in order to attract. Well, I'll just go through. It's to attract the tussock worms. I love that Rock Eater. She just again, you don't go charging into an unfamiliar place, and you don't go touching everything, and you don't go picking up everything. You just don't. In an unfamiliar place, you don't do these things. And the Rock Eater she's just going against all of that. Just all instinct, just thrown out the window. All instinct. It's sad, really. But Amy, of course, she knows what it is. And it's tussock worm pheromone, and the farmers use it. And this was me really trying to, just a little over time, injecting more and more about Amy, because she's a character that often, at least in the first volume, really there's not a whole lot of focus on her background, why she's in the story, and there's more focus on Jeff, obviously, because he's the main character, and a little focus on Sankofa, because he's also with Jeff. But Amy, she gets kind of pushed to the background a lot, and she's sort of a mystery character. And I wanted to, throughout the series, throughout the first volume of the series, just every now and then, just drop little pieces of her puzzle here and there, and this was one of those pieces where it's talking about the fact that she comes from a farming area, and she's talking about the amber harvest, and apparently they have tussock worms there, so we know that these things are fairly common, or at least in sort of areas that are hilly and not really, well, mountainous a little, but hilly, and they have fertile soil, a lot of wooded areas, heavily wooded areas and stuff. But it's called Whim, is this particular pheromone, and that's been distilled down into sort of a powder. It's I don't know, but Amy, of course, she's so used to it that it doesn't bother her, but obviously it bothers Rock Eater, and it bothers Reduha a little bit. You would think that these guys wouldn't be bothered by stuff like that, but for the sake of comedy, because I have to do that every now and then. I'll inject a little bit of comedy to sort of to counter the intensity of the series, because it sometimes it starts going down spiraling into just overlapping levels of intensity, and it's just like, okay, we got to get out of this. Let's funny right there, boom. And this is one of those situations where it starts getting a little intense, and they're talking about how big these tussock worms can get, and it's sort of hinting a little at a time that the tussock worms are the ones that made these cave systems, and it's a result of them just kind of boring through the mountains on their own. They would have just bored through there. It's sort of a larger scale of earthworms. is how I was thinking about it. Earthworms, they're boring through the ground, and they make these sort of tunnel systems, and we don't usually see them, but if they were well the size of a car or bigger, the size of a truck or a bus, then we would definitely see those tunnel systems, and they would definitely go drilling through mountains and such. And this was a slight indicator to anyone that was paying attention. They would recognize this little electrode from issue 5. I think it was 5, either 4 or 5, in the original Plight of the Worms. Which, again, this story originally was supposed to be part of the Worms' Plight. I'm sorry, I said Plight of the Worms earlier, didn't I? The Worms' Plight story arc. And I divided the story arc because I didn't want to introduce the character Vimmer Coco too early. And I didn't want to introduce the characters Rock Eater and Reduha and just have all of these characters, about like 6 issues in. I didn't, that's a lot of characters to deal with. 6, like when you're only like 6 or 7 issues into the series. And characters like Jeff, Amy, and Sankofa hadn't even stabilized at that point. So I split the series, at least I split that story arc up and took a story that took place after the Worms' Plight and put it in between, and it worked out. It actually worked out fine. I sort of recomposed the story so that it would work. And just look at all these tunnel systems. I'm actually sitting, and maybe it seems like I'm sort of wasting time on certain pages, but it's been a while since I actually looked at this issue, and I'm looking at these tunnel systems, remembering drawing them, because they're all of that's drawn in Photoshop, except for Amy. The page that I scanned in just had Amy on it, and the entire cave system was done with Redline. And then, so when I scanned it in, I went back and I just drew all of that in Photoshop right in the computer. And I had a lot of fun with it because there was just tons of little details, all the cracks in the ground and stuff from where it's dried out, and where the pressure of the Tusok worms pushed the rock to the point where it's starting to crumble around the edges and things. And I love that sort of that look, and the different levels of sort of color to indicate shading, and that the tunnels go deeper. I really had a lot of fun with this, and with the textures added on there. And I got a little crazy with some of the texture, but I like the end result. Yeah. Again, a background done completely in Photoshop. It was just Amy on the page. Well, Amy and Sankofa. I think by this point in the series, I was really getting comfortable with the idea of doing backgrounds 100% in Photoshop, just to sort of save time in the whole drawing process, and also in order to manipulate the focal points, because it's much easier if you draw the background completely in the computer and your character is something solid on a different layer. You can sort of create a new sort of focal point, and your character can stand out in front of the background, and it can really look like it. Whereas if you draw everything on one sheet of paper, when you scan it in and you put it into the computer, everything falls flat. Everything lays down to the same layer. And then, you can manipulate stuff. You can go in and you can do masks and things like that in order to create the look of multiple layers, but that's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra work when you're trying to get through a series of pages within a certain time frame. And I don't personally have time to be slowed down like that. I usually only give myself about an hour to finish a single page. So because I have to get through so many within a day. And this is just one of those time-saving techniques that I'm happy that it actually works to good effect. Like I really love the shadowing along here. Like shows that the cave rock is it's dipping in and sort of jutting out, like it's the folds of the cave walls are in there. I really enjoy that kind of detail in reality. I'll just stare at rock formations and cave walls and stuff. I don't go into caves very often, but I have been in a few. Caves are dangerous if you're not there with someone who's very, very familiar with the cave system. You can get lost and die, and even professionals get lost and well, I wouldn't say never seen again, but by the time they're found, it's too late. So be careful in cave systems. Well, and then of course, like I was saying, it takes this intense turn in this part of the story, and I'm not really, I don't really like that texture effect that's going on in the background. I don't like the colors that I chose, but I really couldn't find colors that were satisfying enough to make it look like maybe Amy was feeling sick to her stomach about what she was seeing. And then of course we just go to the scene where we see a tussock worm with all the electrodes hooked up to it. And this is one of the reasons why I really enjoy this particular format, is because it actually allows me to do stuff like that, where I can hold one frame where all you see is the reaction shot and then the thing that they're reacting to, instead of like a traditional comic book where you have multiple panels on a page and you can see the reaction shot, but your eye can slide over to that next frame accidentally and you can see what the big surprise is, the big reveal. Unless, of course, that artist really, like they knew what they were doing and they set it up so that was the last panel. The reaction shot was the last panel, and then the reveal was on the next page. But instead of, having to go through that, every page is reaction, reveal, reaction, reveal, reaction, reveal. I like that format. It's a very storyboard sort of way to go. I had a lot of fun with that tussock worm. It's completely done in Photoshop. The electrodes attached to it are completely in Photoshop. And I knew that I was going to have to... I actually practiced, before I started on this issue, I practiced working with the colors and these filter techniques. I wanted to get it so that it looked like this sort of translucent worm-like creature, where you could see its outer skin, and it had sort of this iridescent look to it. But it had a degree of translucency that you could see sort of its internal organ system. Because it's me relating back to things like earthworms. If you hold an earthworm up to light, a certain degree of light, you can actually see through the earthworm, and you can see its organ system inside, and you can see it actually, pulsating and things like that. And it's a little, I know it's a little gross, but that's exactly how my mind was working when I was creating these things, and that's what I see when I look at like this picture. It's animated in my mind, and I can see the thing sort of pulsating a little inside, and you can see like its sort of organ system, and it's a little excuse me, it's a little like coral reefs, like a coral sort of reef system. Wow, I had fun with that. I do remember I had a lot of fun. That was this issue was pretty stress free. Again, another Photoshop background, reaction, reveal. And then sort of playing with, or not playing with, reminding people that this is something that's happened before, and harkening back to the earlier issues, issue 3, 4, and 5, and in Dunburst, where they were actually doing this, and sort of loosely hinting at the idea that it was the rune claws that set up the power in Dunburs. Dunburs probably would have worked on regular power through breaking down minerals, you know, um, combustion engine type stuff, or steam power, or hydroelectric power. Um, but that stuff's expensive and it's regulated by governments. And a place like Dunburs, a lot of places really close to the Southandic Northandic border tend to run independent of any of the government systems um, that are currently at war. And so they would have tried to find a different way to get power. And as long as the citizens didn't know, then it was okay. And since it was a lot of the rich, the more wealthy merchants in the area that control Dunburs and control things like where the power comes from, how the power is distributed, they were okay with the Runeclaw setting up this kind of power grid in Dunburs, and then it's here where they probably first tested it. The Runeclaws are beasts, heartless beasts. Well, and this is why that old story arc was called The Worm's Plight, is because it was all about these animals being taken advantage of and being used to generate power. And this page is really intense. There's a lot of really bright blue there, but anyways, just really playing well. A lot of these they were difficult to do. It was difficult to plan how these were going to be done. I knew that the Tussock worm throughout a lot of these pages was going to be done completely in Photoshop, but it was going to be interacting with characters that I was going to draw by hand with just pencil on paper. And so I had to figure out how I was going to have them interact and be able to pull it off. It's like having animated characters interacting with live action characters. It's like, how do you get it to pull it off just right so that it looks like they're actually in the same scene and they're physically they're able to touch, and you have to have weight to it and stuff like that. And, well, maybe not that deep. That's wow, yeah, but it was still difficult, and I had to set up where I was going to have pieces cut into other pieces, and just playing around with layers and experimenting, just a lot of experimenting with layers and effects, and having fun. The results were so much fun. I love this part. It's like those parts are really weird looking, and you sort of show some obviously ancient technology that's being used in a more contemporary way. And I love those things, and this will not be the last time that we see some stuff like that. And it's like, are they generators? It's like, well, what are they? We'll definitely find out what they are later on in the series. Not those exact ones, but they definitely show up again. This was dangerous. This was a little dangerous, and it was like, I wanted to show that Amy was passionate, and sometimes, she just can just act without thinking, and it was very, very dangerous for her to climb up there. These are electrodes. There's power that's pulsating through them. You don't just go and tear down, power cables. You can get shocked. There are warnings all over those things. But yeah, Amy goes in and she starts tearing stuff up, and it was just to sort of, I found it as an opportunity to just really inject more character into Amy. And I mean, like I was saying earlier, with it being originally a part of the Worm's Plight story arc, it would have injected a ton of the character of Amy early on, which wouldn't have been a bad thing, but because of the other characters, I couldn't do it. But it definitely wouldn't have been awkward for Amy to be in like a lot of the issues up to this point, where she just sort of looked like a tag-along for absolutely no reason. But she had more of a direct connection to that whole story arc because it went from Dunburst straight into this story. I love the slime coming off of it, where the mucus, where it pulled its I guess, I don't even know what that part of like slugs and snails, what it's called, the foot of it, where what they crawl around on, the muscle that is the foot that pulls them along, and that sort of slime, that mucus slime trail that they create. And I love the idea that the tussock worms, they do that too. And it just lifting its head, and you see like the slime, and it's because it's been sitting in that one place for so long, just generating power, and and it's calling out. And Amy is so full of knowledge. Again, this is one of those scenes where the characters are interacting with something that was completely done in Photoshop, and I had to do a lot of erasing and just so I could get everything to cut together just right, and layering, because the worm is supposed to be turning. Its body is sort of all clumped up together, and it's winding around into like S curves, and I wanted to show that the S curve is happening right there across the head, and then going up and around somewhere to the back, and I wanted to show all of that. And I love Raduha's his face sometimes, the reactions. It's like, you guys feel that vibration? But oh yeah, I was saying that Amy, she's knowledgeable, but she's like a farm girl, but she's born and raised farm girl, and so she would know things like this, and know, okay, she could tell just by looking, this animal is too old to react to to react to the whim, but the children wouldn't be, and that's what the vibrations are. And you see like all these younger tussock worms, and you can tell they're younger. They have deeper, their colors are deeper, and they're less translucent than the mother, but they're all reacting to the whim. To the spice. I'm sorry, Dune just popped in my head. I'm sure somewhere subconsciously it was very inspired by Dune. I love that the story, and unlike a lot of people, I actually like the old '80s movie. I actually like that one. There's something about it, but anyways, Raduha climbing up on the worm again. Solid characters reacting with Photoshop characters, and I like how it came out. I love how you can see that there's weight to the characters, and so parts of the worm are squishing underneath the weight of them. That's really cool. Yeah, I had fun. I love when little details like that actually come together. They turn out right. It makes me really happy with the final product. And these guys, this is such a dangerous thing that they're doing. They're just living for danger in this whole part of the story. They are riding on this thing, which is almost the same diameter as the tunnel that it's going through. That's like riding on the top of a train as it goes through a very low tunnel. It's very dangerous because you don't know if they measured that tunnel perfectly or not, and you don't know if you're going to get squished. It's just too dangerous to do. And they don't know with this, they don't know if they're going to make it through that tunnel. Although it's possible that the tussock worm can reduce its mass like an earthworm can do, where it can stretch itself a little bit thin in order to get through areas. And Amy can talk to animals a little. It's not like she can talk to animals. It's not like a true telepathic sort of thing, but it's one of those things where you grow up with animals enough. You can tell just by some of the sounds they make, their body language and things like that. You can tell what it is they want, what's going on with them. It's like sort of what a veterinarian, that instinct that they have. They've been around animals for so long that they can know. They just know. Or someone like a farmhand would know, who's around animals all the time and farm animals all the time, and they just know. And that's how Amy is. She's not really a psychic thing. She's not hearing voices from the animals in her head. Even if she ever tells anyone that that's what's going on, that's not really what's going on. But some people say that kind of thing. They can talk to the animals. They're animal whisperers. It's just some people have better sort of instinct for knowing the mood of a thing. Just like some people are better at reading people. Some people are really good at reading animals. So Jeff he's just a mess. He's still sedated to a degree, but he's really, since he's Jeff, it takes a lot to keep him really sedated, and he's sort of coming out of it, and he's sort of still, he's a little lost, and he's saying things, and I can say that if you ever wondered what some of that weird sort of gibberish when they do incantations and they're all in logic, if you ever wonder what some of the stuff sounds like, this is what it sounds like. It's this sort of gibberish language that I like making up. I just say like weird things like one of the phrases that they often say is "Jushe mekada." I say things like "Jushe mekada mirias koshun diotesve mirika tochun diak shujun diadusum bakyak." Stuff like that. It's gibberish. It's like tongues. And I freak my family out a lot when I do stuff like that, because I used to play around with it all the time because it was entertaining to my friends. But sometimes your family members are like, "Whoa, what's going on? Are you speaking in tongues, son?" And it's like, no, just making up language. And I would do stuff like that and write down. I would record it and then write down some of the stuff that I liked, how it sounded, and trying to make an alphabet and make up words that actually would be used in a greater alphabet and stuff. And I still do it. Certainly in other series, I actually use full words, but in Goblin, I prefer to sort of just leave it a mystery as to what they were saying, how it sounded, and not completely translate it. But I really enjoy linguistics and all the things sort of associated with it. So I can't help it sometimes. I like making up words and trying to decipher how they would be pronounced. And even he was like, it's just gibberish, And it's Joko Murama. It's like, what? I love that, because what he's actually doing is he's saying, incantations that are very specific. They're very, very specific to what's coming up. They're not just regular incantations, and that's why this character, Vimmer Coco, is very shocked by this. Lancaster he's less impressed. He's just I wanted him to seem very barbaric, and you just see him. He's like drooling and spitting and food just coming out of his mouth, and I love that. I love that kind of stuff. I believe Miyazaki does stuff like that in a lot of his early films. Certainly La Puta, Castle in the Sky. He has like characters eating and talking at the same time, and eating like large quantities of food. He always makes me hungry. He really focuses on food really well. But you get that in a lot of like anime and manga. There's a lot of focus on food. And me, I'm always hungry, so I focus on food a lot too. But anyways, I wanted to show like how barbaric this character is. He's just smacking. You can hear him smacking. His cheeks are full of food, and his the words are muffled and stuff, and it's tragic. And see, I was that same thing that I was talking about earlier. How it was dangerous for them to be riding on the top of the Tusok worm. It was something that I thought about when I wrote the story. I was thinking about how dangerous that is, and so I automatically injected a little bit of reality into the story. And you can see the top of the cave system right there. If they lifted their heads even a little bit, top of their heads would get cut off. That's how fast they're moving. I mean, it would just be tragedy for any one of them. I was originally going to have them like Sankofa saying something here, but it was unnecessary. They just needed to be going for the ride. I enjoy the scene. It's like the tunnel, the roof of the cave the tunnel that they're going through that's a Photoshop effect, motion blur that I put on there, and I like the effect that it actually has. I put the same motion blur on Sankofa's flame, and so it's kind of being whipped back really quick. That's fun. That's a fun picture. I like it. It's the colors, the way that the colors are arranged. I don't know. It's really enjoyable to the eye. With the bottom layer being like these shades of blue and purple, and then it goes up into Amy, who has all these browns and sort of these very, I wouldn't say bland colors, but they are kind of bland. In contrast, at least, to the color of this particular Tusok worm. And then the background color and the roof color, that cave, being those sort of teal, those shades of like teal, those very ocean reef sort of colors, or well, depending on what ocean reef that you're in. I like the contrast, and the they're called Barot. And they're just being curious, playing around with stuff, and I'm thinking about what comes up with them, and they're walking around, and they had their orders to, spread out and set themselves up in certain places, and you can see them sort of talking to each other, and they're very curious, and I like the idea of communication between insects, and even though they're mechanical, it's still all very based on things like insects and how they communicate with one another, and we as people don't really know what they're communicating to one another really. We can kind of see, but we don't know exactly what's going on. But I love watching like ants communicate with one another, and you see their little antenna waving about, and they run back to the and they're running back and forth and whatnot, and it's just really amusing to watch. I'm one of those kind of people. So here come the Tusok worms, and they really cut it close. I wanted it to be far more intense than this, and if I had more time to really think about it, I would have tried to compose the shots in a way that it would have made it look like these Tusok worms were really bearing down on Jeff and really like cutting it like razor thin, to the amount of time he had to free himself. You don't really see him struggling. Oh, and there's an example. There's more of an example of how they took a collapsed statue and turned it into a table. You can see that it's a collapsed statue with a bird beak and everything, just like the ones behind them. And it's broken into like a couple of different pieces, and they just set up chairs next to it, which technically would be impossible. They'd be pretty far away from the table. As close as they are to that table, their legs would have to be under that rock, like a real table. But we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to go to the next page. It's one of those suspension of disbelief situations. Jeff struggling. I was supposed to show him actually see the Tusok worms coming, towards him, and that's why he started struggling to get himself loose. But you know, I try to stay within a certain page count. But certainly by this point, I was trying to stay within a certain page count, and often going over that page count and frustrating myself because I would miss my deadline. A reaction shot. I don't know. That's some sort of banana type thing. I have no idea what that thing is, but who cares? Fruit, vegetable, who knows? Yeah. I really wanted. I wanted this picture to look somewhat different. How he broke the pole that was holding him into the ground, to the spot. I initially wanted it to break where, not at the point that it's breaking. I wanted to show it where it broke over time, where it started cracking and splintering, and it was because he was bending over and breaking it, and so it was supposed to break where his wrists are tied to it originally, but I realized that I couldn't quite get the scene done, and I have like several rejected pages from attempting to do that sequence, and I just went with this one, where instead he pushed with his spine against the pole and broke it. Essentially, it's breaking at the base as well as at this middle portion, because it's attached to the ceiling and attached to the floor. And so if you put enough pressure on probably a pole that's really, really old, then it's gonna break. It's this dried out piece of wood. They don't expect people to be able to do this, but Jeff's not normal, so it's not normal. And he did cut it close. And there's like a couple of tussock worms. It's really hard to tell it's multiple ones because I put that motion blur on them, so it really distorts the lines that cut between them, so that you can tell that it's multiple ones. But yeah, he really cut it close, and they just plow right through. The tussock worms don't even know what they're doing. They're just, I guess not really in heat, but definitely following that whim trail, and so they don't even care. They're just, anything in their path, they just destroy. It would be an effective weapon. Certainly, it could really be controlled, but they're wild animals essentially. They're not really controlled by the rune claws per se. They are controlled through the whim, but if you don't lay down a whim trail, then they're probably off somewhere deep inside the cave system, either sleep or running around making new cave systems, making new tunnels. They're like wild stallions. They're just running around doing what they do. And guys like Lancaster and his father, and all the workers that have worked with them, they take advantage of the fact that these things are attracted to this pheromone, and they used that to create this mining system. Yeah. Just the idea of it going around the corner. You just see the tail end of it as it goes around the corner. I like that. It's all animated in my head. Oh. Yeah, sometimes I would definitely love to be able to animate Goblin, but not by myself. No, sir. Not by myself. The Lancaster is... the party's been spoiled. Everything. It's been ruined. He's been being made to look bad in front of his guest. Lancaster's a bit of a spoiled brat, but that's to be expected. Jeff and his head hurts so bad. And the mother shows up with Amy, Raduha, Senkofa, and Rockeater riding on top. And I like that picture. the Toslok worm really reminds me of a train right there. Um, I do have in a different series. I have trains that look like they look sort of like caterpillars slash worms, and they're called, iron. They're called the iron worms, the iron worm line system. Um, I love all the pillars scattered along the backgrounds and stuff. Those were really, they were difficult. I had to make like a set of them from different angles and sort of just place them into the backgrounds. I had to use them. It's like reusing assets over and over and over, and I had to do that a lot because it took so much time to create them the first couple of times that I was like, I can't keep doing this. It's slowing me down. But I liked the way that they came out when I would use them over and over. That was cool. They jumped off just in time for the Tussock worm to crash into the table and scatter everybody. And you see Vimmercoco down at the bottom running. Love that. She took advantage of the situation. She's running off. She's got a bad attitude. Yeah. I just imagined like if not caterpillars, but if earthworms were really really large, they wouldn't it the way that they would fight people would be to thrust them about. They smack them around with sort of their front end or even their tail. They take people and they poke them and then thrust them up into the air or thrust them to the side and stuff like that. And so I just decided that that's what they'd be doing a lot of. I can't think of any animals that actually do that in reality. I'm sure there are some. Maybe a rhinoceros, maybe. It doesn't just impale you on its horn. It probably uses that horn to knock you to the side or to throw you into the air. But still, yeah, I love this. And originally that picture was a two-picture sequence where you saw her actually flip the cap on the charge, and then in the next frame her thumb pressed down on the picture, but it looked bad, and I was like, it was unnecessary to have two sequences and then this set of two sequences come right up behind it. I just thought it was overkill. It's too long, too just drawn out. But I love they're communicating, they're reacting to the charger, and then they explode, and you see like little bits and pieces of them. You see like the husk of one of them right here. I love that. It was just a little detail that I just really enjoyed. And the thing about this page is it's one of those things where I didn't know how I was going to do it, so I didn't plan a lot ahead as far as how I was going to create the page. And so what's actually going on in here is the explosions are done completely in Photoshop. Everything else is actually drawn, and like I was saying before, where sometimes you end up doing, I went and I took all the different parts apart. I took them after I scanned the whole page. I took them and I control C, control V. I copy pasted all these different parts. Like all the rocks are on their own layer. All the bits and pieces of the of these things, they're on different layers. Even some of them are on two separate layers. Like this one has a motion blur to it, and then you see tiny little fragments in here, and those have less of a motion blur on them. And I took everything and just put it on different layers, to get that effect. It's fun. I think it did well. I mean, it certainly makes those explosions look really, they're intense. They're small little pocket explosions, but just the fragmentation, the way that they've blown away bits of the wall, I really like that. And there are so many. I should have really shown how many of them Vermakoko had dispersed throughout the entire cave system, because the whole time she was walking and talking with Lancaster, she was dropping them from under her cape, and and so the whole cave was just filled with them throughout different parts, and it's really compromising the integrity of the structure, and so the ceiling is falling apart, and well, of course, his uncle says it, Uncle Josem. He's so arrogant. Look at him. He's just so prideful and arrogant and just, give me your pistol, uncle. All of that. He's having a really hard time, like, coming out of that sort of hypnotic state that he's in. He can see Amy, and he definitely can't focus on her, but he can see her and Sengofa. But he's still, his brain is still firing away, and he's still reciting incantations, and he can't resist. They're blasting out of his mind and just shooting straight out of his mouth. He can't control them, and he's got a major headache. And that was one of those things I was going to play up a lot, like the idea of headaches being anchored to the blue fire, in the whole blue fire circles and stuff. But I decided against it. After this particular issue, I was like, that's it's going to make Jeff look really whiny. And I didn't want that. I didn't want him to look like he was always whining about having a headache all the time. But yeah, I like the statue in the background. It's all it's all silhouetted in shadow. It adds some depth, a little bit of depth to this picture, which really is all background. It's really all Photoshop stuff to make that work. This was cool. The pistol being poked up against the side of her head. I had a hard time figuring out how I was going to do that scene. I was going to have a picture just like this, but inside the frame as well, you would see the pistol poking up against the side of Vermakoko's head, and I just couldn't get it all to work together, so I just divided the scene up amongst these couple of pictures, like this one, and just, I love that. She's just prattling on about her culture, and the universal clockwork, and it's beyond your understanding. You'll never decipher the scrolls, no matter how hard you try. Yeah. An insult to her entire culture. Yeah. I wanted her to seem very prideful and very intense about where she comes from, and I mean that's just the witch clockers in general and their people, and this is me assuming that you've already read the issue 14A and 14B, and you already know what's going on. If not, you've had all of this spoiled for you, and you should go back and read the issues before watching the commentary. And Jeff getting sort of pale, but not really pale, but sort of just changing color altogether. And Sengofa knows what it means. He actually already knows what it means, and by this point, Jeff is too far gone. He's just speaking gibberish, incantations. Not really gibberish, but you know what I mean. And then he's just. I wanted that particular picture to be a little bit. I wanted it to look a little better than that, but it was purely experimental. Like, I had the idea, and I sketched it all out. I drew everything except for Jeff. Like, Jeff was all in red line, so that I drew it completely in the computer. But I didn't know how I was going to get the effect um, that I wanted, that I could see in my head. I didn't. I wanted it to sort of look ghost-like, very paranormal, very. I said paranormal. I meant. Oh, I can't think of the word. It's unimportant. Uh, Non-corporeal, I guess, or I feel like I'm using that incorrectly, but just very ghostly. And then I'm happy with the way that it came out, where it's just a blast of light as he passes into the circle of blue fire. It's just this bright, bright light. And Sankofa telling Amy, "Keep your eyes closed, don't knock." And then he just disappears, and it's like if you were standing in front of the world's biggest camera with, well, a flash, and it just poof, it went off, and it's just a total gray out, where you can't see, um, or a white out, I guess, is more. No, well, I don't know which is more appropriate. I think gray out is more so when the blood rushes to your head and you almost pass out, kind of like a blackout. But I think it has more to do with aerodynamics, or moving through air, like paratroopers, parachuting or something like that, or flying in an airplane. Anyways, yeah, I love the little flecks of light just kind of trailing off into the air like little embers from a bonfire. They're just sort of fluttering off into the air. It's just little flecks, and just Amy just being completely dumbfounded, like not knowing what's going on, and yeah, it's just blue fire, this is that whole mystery and what's going on between these characters, just being dug deeper. Of course, Lancaster just hates it all. It's just madness. Of course, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that everyone can assume that Lancaster is off his rocker a little, even if it's just a little bit. He's off his rocker. Clearly, he's being affected by the mines, like maybe his father was, because his uncle certainly thought he was, and he's definitely been affected. He's spent too much time there, and because he doesn't know what this particular mineral is that he's been collecting, so he doesn't know how it would affect him chemically. He doesn't know how it affects his internal chemistry, and it's one of those things you got to be careful of. Playing around with minerals and stuff like that, even in like caves, and you have to be careful what you touch sometimes, because you can break out, or you can be poisoned, depending on what you touch. You touch something and it gets in your pores, or you touch your mouth, you touch your eyes. And in this case, and then even with certain minerals, letting off a degree of radiation gets into you. So you have to be careful of those kind of things. And the great reveal where he snatches off her hood. I do hate the way that this snatch happened. I wasn't thinking about the way that the mask would or the hood would have come off of her face, with his arm pulling up like that, and the hood is kind of flowing in the opposite direction of how he pulled. I regret that I didn't think about it as I was drawing it, but oh well. I love his reaction. It's again one of those reaction, and just I love their reaction more so than Lancaster's, where Raduha is stuttering. I love how he calls Rock Eater boss. He calls her boss, and her reaction, she's like, I see it, but I don't believe my eyes. And I can honestly say I have been waiting for this moment for so long, I mean, I wrote this story so long ago. I mean, even now, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about everybody's reactions, and then showing Vimercoco for the first time. You know, and her plumage is not as grand as I would have. Like I draw it now, but I hadn't practiced enough. Drawing the character again, so that I could get her plumage really looking great. But still, it's still a very intense picture. It's very impactful because this is a character you've never seen before, and she looks like no other character that's been in the series at this point. So she's a very strange looking character, and she gets even stranger later on, the more of her that's revealed. But when we get to that one, we'll talk about that. And her gun, which is just, again, it's one of those things where it's animated in my mind, the way that the Chumaka works, where in order to, because it's a big rifle. It's a, I don't even know what you call those kinds of guns. A heavy gun, you know. It's a big heavy gun, and it's like a high velocity type gun, fully automatic kind of thing. And it's you have to, in order to carry it around, you have to be able to. It has to reduce itself. It has to shrink. You know, you can't run around with a big gun. And you know, she's very much about secrecy. So she has to have something that she can hide under her cloak, attached to the back of her belt, and not have to worry about anyone noticing. And I love how it's you see the little mechanical thing, so you know it's like unfolding, and it's making very mechanical sounds as it's unfolding, and all of that was done in Photoshop. Like this last image is the one that I used. That's the one that I drew. And then what I did was I took that image, I scanned it, you know, and then instead of, well, you know, like you merge all your files, all your layers down to one, you know, before you. That's normally how I do it. Once I'm done coloring and everything, I merge all the files down to one file. I mean, all the layers down into one layer, and then you know it's ready to be. And I turn it into a PNG file, and then later it's transformed into a JPEG, and so that it can fit comfortably inside of the Swift format, which I use on DeviantArt, unlike the PDFs on the Goblin website. Anyways, but I took it and I sort of backwards engineered the gun in Photoshop, where it's all about erasing. Like I had to erase all the parts and then draw them by hand, and draw back in her cape, draw the shadow back into her cape, and I just went backwards, and I cut and pasted some of the parts and reduced them, like the little stems, like these are actually Steam cartridges. I never mention it because it just seems so unimportant. You know, I kind of want these people to sort of just accept the technology. The guns are Steam powered. At least a lot of the guns are Steam powered, not all of them, and that's something that will come up later. But these are little Steam cartridges that power the gun. Certainly the transformation of the gun, but I like copy and pasted those, reduced them in to a half, so that they looked like they were popping out of the sides of the gun. And I just had a lot of fun experimenting with turning a single picture into a multiple picture transformation of a single object, and it was just fun. And I love like this. This was another one of those scenes where when I wrote that line, she was like, what's happening? And Senkopa was like, Amy, we're witnessing history. And it's just again, it's one of those things where right now I have goosebumps, you know, from just thinking about that line. And it's like the witch clockers have returned. And it's just supposed to be this thing. It's like, what are witch clockers? Why return from where? What's going on? And it's just like, okay, you know that this is serious. You know this isn't supposed to be an intense thing. You know that something is coming up. The story is really about to take another turn. But yeah, so we've reached the end of this commentary, and again, I've rambled for an hour, even though all of these commentaries were only supposed to be like 30 minutes. 20 to 30 minutes, and I ramble for an hour. Because there's so much that I want to talk about with these. I can't help it. Oh my gosh. There's so much that's going on through my head as I'm working on the pages and after I'm finished. And I just want to talk about it all, I just want to talk about all of it. But, alas, I must end this commentary. Thank you for sitting through my rambling and watching these commentaries. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of the past commentaries. I'm trying to get the audio quality a little bit better. I have, a new microphone and everything, which is kind of part of the reason why I had stopped doing them. I had to go out and get a new microphone. The old one was it was trash. It was garbage. So it's new and improved. But again, thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you on the next commentary, which will have a special guest commentator. Awesome. So look forward to that. Thank you again, and goodbye.